Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Active Travel Cafe here on Tuesday, November 12th. I'm Roxanne, I'm your host this evening, and back up today is Adam Reynolds. And I am absolutely delighted that we have two wonderful speakers tonight. First, we have Lucy Saunders, Director of Healthy Streets, and Lucy will be introducing the new Healthy Streets tool to help practitioners and advocates make the case for investing in better streets for active travel. And if you stick around after Lucy, we'll be joined by Mark, or Ranty Highwayman, and he will be giving us the good, the bad, and the interesting. And today's topic is the path to enlightenment. So stick around for Mark. But right now, I shall hand over to Lucy, who will tell us more about the Healthy Streets tool. Thanks, Lucy.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here. And this tool is for you. You are my core audience for this tool. So if you haven't tried it yet, hopefully this will give you a little introduction to it and might tempt you out onto the street to give it a go. And if you have tried it, you might have some questions for me, which would be fantastic. So to start off with, a little bit on who I am. If you don't know me, my name's Lucy. I'm the director of Healthy Streets. I developed the Healthy Streets approach. If you've heard of Healthy Streets, that came from me. And there are lots of tools that are free on the website for you to have a go with if you want to. I also offer training in consultancy, and I work across the UK, but also in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. And what I'm going to be talking about today is this new tool, how it works, how you can use it, and then we'll have time for your questions afterwards. So there are loads of Healthy Streets tools. If you haven't had a look, go and look at healthystreets.com and you'll find a whole array of them to help you to navigate to find out which is the right tool for the thing that you're doing. We've now added a flow diagram onto the website so that you can work out which one you want to use. And we're going to be looking at these two today, the on-street feeling survey, the on-street measurement survey. So these tools, as I said, they are for you. And there's a whole range of different people who might use them for different things. It could be that interested individuals want to go out and see how healthy their street is. It could be that you're trying to get the attention of a decision maker, and the emails, the PowerPoint presentations, the carefully worded briefings are not doing the job. Take them out on the street, get them to open their phone and have a go with this, and you will help them to realize very quickly what needs to change and what their role is in making that happen. You might be working on a street project. This tool is perfect if you need to do a very quick baseline assessment of what's not working, and then to do an evaluation afterwards to see how you've made the street better. If you're advocating for change in a neighbourhood, you can assess your streets and send your results into your local decision makers to show them what things you think need changing. If you're trying to work out which street to focus on, because you've got lots of different streets that all seem to be in need, using this tool can give you some useful information for working out where the greatest need is and what you could be doing first. You might be trying to train up colleagues or other professionals. You might be working in consultancy. This tool is a great educational tool and it's free for anyone to use. And you can also use the data that you're collecting in research as well. The aim of the tool was to show a wide range of different people a new way of looking at their streets. My mission in life is to show people what is most important for a street to be a healthy and inclusive place, and this is what this tool is doing. Hopefully, it will build interest in making streets healthier, but also build a database that we can use to track improvements and identify where we should be doing things differently. The format of this tool is that it's a website, and that's deliberately done so that it's really easy for anyone to access. There's no barriers. You don't have to download an app or pay any money or anything like that. You just go either to the Healthy Streets website or straight to surveys.healthystreets.com, and you can open it and use it for free on any street anywhere in the world. You don't need to register for a free account. You can have 3 goes at it, but then you will be prompted that you need to create an account, and that's just so that you can keep your data, so you can keep a record of the surveys that you've done. And of course, you can delete your account and all your personal data whenever you want to. So I'm going to just very briefly take you through how the tool looks and how it works, and then I'm sure there's going to be some questions. So You start off by choosing whether you want to do an entirely subjective assessment of how the street feels for you, or whether you want to do an objective measurement of how the street performs. And there's two different tools in one, and you pick which one you want to do. Your phone will pick up the location of the street that you're on, and you have to be on the street that you're assessing to use this tool. You can't sit in your living room and assess all the streets in your neighborhood. You have to get out and walk those streets if you want to use the tool. It will give you a list of questions to answer, and you can add any notes to it that you want, and you can add photos to it as well. And it will generate for you a score out of 100, with 100 being an extremely healthy street and 0 being a very unhealthy street, so that you can see overall how healthy that street is. And it will also produce, if you've created an account, a detailed report which you can download as a PDF, and you can store it and you can share it with anyone you want to. The way that it looks is there's the feeling survey and the measurement survey, and you can toggle between the two and decide which one you want to do. Let's say today you want to assess subjectively how the street feels for you. You click on this purple button here, and it will immediately pick up your location, asks you what street you're on, and it will then drop a pin where you are standing, and your assessment will be for the location you're standing in. It will then take you to a menu of questions that you're going to answer. They look like these purple squares here. So if we pick the first one, asking you how welcoming the street feels for you, you get a dial 0 to 10. So if you think the street feels really welcoming, you'd score it 10. If you don't think it's welcoming at all, you score it a 0. You select your answer, and you can then track your way through your answers to your different questions as you go through them all. Once you've answered all your questions, your purple tiles will change shade to be lighter, and then you can get your results. It will give you a chance to review all your answers and add any extra notes and photos that you want. And then when you submit your score, it will generate a result that looks like this. So you get your score as a number in that Healthy Streets pin. And you can then find out a bit more about what that number even means. And you can share your results on social media. So you can immediately share that score with anyone you want to. If you did a measurement survey, it works very similar. So you start off clicking the purple button. It picks your location, but this time for a measurement survey, you're assessing a length of street. You're not just picking one single location. So it will ask you to drop a pin at the beginning and the end of the section of street that you're assessing. And then you will walk up and down that street to assess how you think it's doing. You've got 20 multi-choice questions to answer. If we take the first one, which is about how many cars are going along that street at that moment in time, you get 3 options to choose from that are shown here. If you're not really sure how to measure the thing that's being asked, you click on this button here, and it will give you more detail on how to measure it, and lots of diagrams showing you the things that might be a bit complicated. And if you don't know why you're being asked the question, you can click on this button and it will tell you why it's important. So you select your answers to all the different questions. You can then add notes, and you can add photographs, and you can do that for every single question. So you can make a very detailed report if you want to. And as you fill in the questions, they will change color. Once you filled them all in, you can review your answers, submit your results, and again, you will get your score coming up. Once you've created an account, all of your reports that you've made will go into your account area, so you can look through them all. You've signed up for a free account either at the bottom of the screen and the Me area, or at this point. And all of your surveys are all stacked up in there, and you can sort them by type of survey, date, name, those kinds of things. And in your full reports, you get a breakdown of the Healthy Streets indicators. So if you know about Healthy Streets, you know that we assess 10 different indicators, as well as all your detailed notes. And you can manage your many surveys on your desktop. That's a bit easier than trying to look at them all on your phone. So if you do lots of them, you can have a look at all your results and pick out the ones you want to work on. Okay, I just want to mention a couple of other things, and then we'll go to you for some questions. I'm hoping there'll be some challenging questions. So the first is to mention, if you haven't seen it, there is a new guide for Healthy Streets imagery, which is a fun read. Even if you're not someone who is commissioning imagery, you can critique your local imagery that's used by your council or your organisation to see what kind of messaging it is giving. And if you're interested in Healthy Streets training, there's a new online short course that's starting on Thursday morning. So it's 3 sessions for the next 3 Thursday mornings. I'll put the link to the Eventbrite for booking a spot in the chat so that you can sign up if you're interested in learning more about healthy streets. This is my email address and the website. Feel free to get in touch if you've got anything that you want to share with me or if you want to find out more about healthy streets. Great. I'm going to stop sharing now and find out if anyone's got any questions for us.
That is brilliant. Thank you so much, Lucy. And so exciting to see the Healthy Streets tool continuing to evolve as well. Now, those regulars in the audience might notice that I made a mistake. We forgot to do news. So don't worry, everybody. We will get to news, but let's do questions with Lucy first. So I can see Martin keen there with a hand up. And I hope that's a question for Lucy and not news. Martin, what's your question?
Question for Lucy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Lucy, I was wondering what the take-up from councils was for this tool, or is it too early days?
It is a very new tool. So far, globally, we've had 1,000 surveys completed, but they will be, all over the world. So 1,000 is a lot, but when they're spread out everywhere, we're not seeing strong concentrations in any particular area. But I'm having a lot of conversations with different local authorities who are looking at how could they use this to elicit the views of their communities. I also have heard from quite a number of advocates who are proactively engaging their local authority and encouraging them to look at the results that they've been collecting. So if you want your local authority to be using this, feel free to send them a little example of one that you've done to whet their appetite.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lucy. All right, I'll take a question from the chat. Wookie would like to know about the various social media connections with the apps. So do you do the non-corporate social media, so Matrix, Mastodon, and so on, or and do you think it should be connected to those other platforms?
So in terms of social media, there hasn't been a huge amount of use of it in terms of people directly linking their results through so far. What I've generally been finding is people produce a full report and then they send the report to the people that they want to share it with. I'm finding that professionally, most people are focused on LinkedIn at the moment for sharing information. Not so, as was mentioned earlier, not so much of an interest in Twitter for a range of reasons. So we will watch it and see where the need is. If you think there's a real interest in something else being added, then let me know. I make changes to this tool based on demand. So if you're the only person in the world who wants a feature, possibly it's not the best use of resource for us to add it. But if you can make the case that lots of people will find it really useful, then we do make changes to the tool.
Great. Thanks, Lucy. I'm taking another question from the chat from Shane in Galway. Is the pinch point button about footpath space, or does it also cover places where people on bikes get squashed or feel they are about to get squashed?
So the pinch point question is in the measurement survey, and it is asking you where is the narrowest space available on the footpath. So it is looking at footpath space, it's not looking at cycle space. There are other questions in there that relate to cycling. I would encourage you to go through it, look at the questions, look at the why are we measuring this, and look at the how do we measure this. And it should cover everything that is really vitally important in terms of healthy streets. But if you think something's missing, I want to know about it, so let me know.
Brilliant. Okay. Adam has a hand up. Adam, your question.
Yeah, I know when Strava did their metro city stuff analysis, they basically aggregated data into heat maps that weren't that useful because they were using sports athletes to get that information, but it was still interesting. But are you looking at some point to then start aggregating some of this information into creating these heat maps? And because you get one survey, it's one person's opinion, but you get 3 or 4 that beginning to show a trend, you get something that actually can be quite powerful in terms of the councils.
Absolutely, that's exactly what we're doing. So there are 2 ways that you can find out what people have been filling in these surveys. One option is you ask people to send you their results. And if you do that, they will be able to send you their report that's got all of their personal notes and photos in it. But you might not know all the people in an area who have been using this tool. So if you want to know what have the results been for this neighborhood or for this county, if you contact me and say, Lucy, I want to know from this date to this date, what are the results that we're getting, I can put those results together for you. I will say though, there is not much point in doing it until a lot of people have started filling it in, the point that Adam was making. So if there's only 4 survey results for a county, it's not terribly meaningful. So we do need a lot of people to fill it in. But the other thing is that the more people who fill it in, the more granular the data I can share. So I can start breaking the results down by ethnicity, age, disability, time of day, weather, all sorts of other factors, so that we can have an understanding of how different people are experiencing streets, which is really useful. There is a cost associated with me pulling that data, cleaning it, packaging it up and sending it over to you. So it will depend on what circumstance you're in, whether that is worthwhile doing or not.
Thanks, Lucy. Okay, question from Rosa, and this could be about getting many more entries in the app. Could this be a class activity? Could be a good TfL Stars activity for getting kids engaged?
Yeah, so in terms of giving permission for sharing their data, kids need to be 13. So with the app, it asks you at the beginning if you're over the age of 13, and that is because we can't start collecting data from people who aren't of an age of consent to share it. For over 13s, they can create their own account, they can fill it in. So for secondary school, this would be an ideal activity for them to be doing. For younger kids, you'd need to think through how could you do that with maybe a class activity as a group or working with adults in pairs. Certainly kids with their parents could do it and do the assessments together. So there's lots of potential for involving children. It's a relatively straightforward, easy thing to fill in. So there shouldn't be any barriers, even for kids as young as 8, in terms of understanding the questions and being able to answer them. It's just a matter of consent as to whether or not they can create their own accounts.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just thinking that could be something we could put in front of schools that we're talking to as potential projects. Okay. Someone said they were late. Is the app available on Android? And I guess
it is just a website. So at any phone anywhere in the world, you just go to surveys.healthystreets.com and you open it in your web browser. Chrome seems to be the one that works best for most people. The glitch that I'm finding people are hitting, so don't be dismayed if this happens to you, is you may have denied location services on your phone. So if you've done that, you need to enable them for you to be able to fill in the survey. So if you start it off and you go, oh, I can't get into it, it's probably because somewhere you have not enabled location services, and it needs to be able to pull exactly where you are so that you are filling that survey in on street, because we do not want people sitting at their desks filling them in for other streets elsewhere in the country. Part of the point of this survey tool is getting people out on streets and really experiencing them and seeing for themselves what the things are that make them a barrier to people using them.
Brilliant. We've got a question about partnering with Fix My Street, but I also wonder just about integration in general. So, CamCycle works with Cyclescape, and I'm wondering, could there be a way of connecting healthy street reports into Cyclescape or into something like Fix My Street?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason why it couldn't be linked into those things.
Yeah, so there's a API, or maybe we need some tech people to help us here.
We would need to have a conversation about who's going to manage the whole thing, but there's no barrier to that happening. It's all about doing what is going to be useful for the users. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Could be an interesting pilot project out there, maybe for a local campaign group. Okay, next question from H. In 1990 in Boston, the city paid for street stalls and entertainers to slow down pedestrian flows outside larger stores, as this was shown to drag customers into the stores because they're slowed down, they have to look in the window, and then I guess they get attracted inside. Is there any data on this that's current or more objective? Or I suppose, what can we do on our streets that encourage people to enter the various shops on those streets?
Is that a question for me, or is that a question for the group?
I think this is well, let's see, have you got an opinion? And if anyone else
I
has,
always have an opinion, but I suspect they might be wanting to pull thoughts from others in the group. So I don't want to dominate if there's an interest in hearing what others have got to say.
You go first and others will jump in if they want to.
I think if you want people to go into shops, you need to make your streets accessible with nice wide footpaths, with places for people to sit, with shade and shelter, with all the things that we measure in a healthy street survey. And then if you want to start throwing some street entertainers in there as well, fantastic. But let's get the basic fundamentals right, which we don't do on really any more than a minority of streets in this country. Yeah.
I'm wondering if the protesters currently chaining themselves to vehicles in my local high street to stop it being improved could be considered entertainment. Anyway, on to another question. That's for the news section. Okay, bear with me while I read this one. Oh yes, are there any plans to use healthy streets for academic research? We've got a social scientist in the audience who would be interested in this for analytics. Does this record and enable repeat measures of places over time to measure the effect of changes?
Yes, absolutely. It's about measuring change. So you could go out onto your street and you could measure it once an hour, every hour, and just show how it changes over the day, if that's something that interests you. But you can go back to the same street every week, every month, or every year and see how it's changing over time. So you can do as many repeats on the same street as you want to do. Whatever's going to be useful for you. And in terms of academics, if they can contact me, let me know what they want, then I'm very, very happy to collaborate with academics. I've done that on other projects, and yeah, it usually works really, really well.
Brilliant. Adam, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, I noticed that you set the boundary on a road. So is there like a maximum length, or do you just say, yeah, go for it 10 miles if you want? Or and then the other side of it is, I'm guessing there's a like a healthy streets kit that you need with you, like a tape measure to be able to.
Well, really good question. So first of all, the length of street. The street network has been kind of broken up into little sections. So it will ask you to measure a street. But if you've got a very, very long A road, it will have been broken up into sections and it will ask you to do one section at a time. So you can't really do 10 miles in one go. But some streets that are very short, they might only be a few hundred meters, and others could be much longer. And you can choose to do part of that street or you can choose to do the whole of that street, but that's entirely up to you. In terms of the kit that you need, when you're doing the feeling survey, all you need is your own opinion. When you're doing the measurement survey, it says it will be helpful for you to have a measuring tape. But the things that you're measuring are things that many of you, I'm sure, will feel confident that you can judge just from looking at them. So is the footpath narrower than a metre at the narrowest point? On many streets in the UK, it's pretty obvious that there's somewhere that's narrower than a metre wide. You can take a measuring tape if you want to do it in detail and keep your own records of exactly how wide and narrow it is at different points. But you can definitely also do this without the measuring tape. So don't let that put you off, is what I would say.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lucy. Okay, have we got any more questions before we go to our unusual itinerary today of then going to the news? So any more questions? Yes, there's some coming through. Okay, there's one more here in the chat. Something about often schools sign up to various websites and are allocated multiple user logins they can allocate to children, which means the children can remain anonymous. So that could be a way of working with
that could be. So if I have a clamoring of people saying we want to do this with kids, then I can look at how we actually add that in, and that feature is something that isn't available in the first version of it. But sometimes people who will work for the same organization have said that they want to have kind of multiple users. If you work in an organization with lots of other people, you can, in your account area, put the name of your organization, and that means we can group your results by the organization that you work for. So that's just something to mention in terms of grouping results by type of people. You can do it that way. But yeah, there could be a new development coming in terms of multiple users linked to one account. But for now, that feature isn't currently available.
Brilliant. Okay, I think that might be all the questions.
Thank you all very much. Lovely to see you all.
Thank you so much, Lucy. An absolute delight to have you. And as I said, just really amazing to see how this tool is evolving over the years. And I'm definitely going to go and share it with CamCycle members and see if they want to get started. And like I said, let's see if we do a Healthy Streets before and after these protests and the work and see what happens locally. But thank you so much, and lots of brilliance and thank yous, and looking forward to trying it out. And looking forward to your next visit where we can maybe see the next evolution. Thanks, Lucy. Brilliant. Okay, everyone, my apologies. I didn't do news at the start. So if you've got some news, why don't you put your hand up or pop something in the chat, and we'll do a little quick news intermission before heading on to Mark about the path to enlightenment. Ruth, you've got your hand up. Would you like to share some news? Ruth, news? No? Okay, we're going to go on to...
No, I'm here. But
there you are. Okay.
Sorry. I'm in a public place, so I apologise for any noise in the background. My news is, I think, very tragic news, which is that a woman cycling, a mother of 2 children, a teacher, was killed in 2021, crossing the exit of a sports athletic ground in Richmond. It only went to court last year. The inquest started in 2021. But it was caught, and the jury decided that the driver was not guilty of manslaughter by careless driving. It's an exit from a sport place. It goes directly into a cycle lane and a pedestrian walking place. It's TfL outside the gates, but TfL are unable to force the athletic ground to close that exit. I'm particularly upset because I just can't even begin to imagine what it must be like. But the sports ground have also put up cyclist dismount signs on the cycle lane outside, and it would seem that neither Richmond Council nor TfL have got the heart or the inclination to remove it. So I just feel really, really gutted that yet another young life has been lost. And because they were cycling, it's kind of counted for nothing. And it's very distressing. I'm sorry about that, but it's really very upsetting. It's something I use several times a week, and I cannot believe that anyone would find the driver not guilty of something. We do need HSE on these kind of crashes, I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. Sounds like driver, but also design issue, and they're clearly not working out what would make that safer to do. And you'd think a place responsible for activity and health might be more supportive of cycling. So I share your distress there. Sorry to hear it. Adam, would you like to share your news? Adam from Bristol. Oh wait, there's 2 Adams from Bristol and Bath. Adam Cattle. Too many Adams.
Hello. So yeah, Adam from Bristol, just reporting the East Bristol livable neighbourhood is just starting to be implemented after about 5 years of planning and people saying we haven't been consulted and all that sort of malarkey, and they've just started putting things in the last week. I live just outside the actual area, but I'm on a WhatsApp group which has got some very excited residents who are very pleased that it's going in. Although obviously there are other less excited people in the Bristol area, but so far so good, and hopefully it will improve Bristol's traffic for the better. I'll leave it there.
Brilliant. Great news, Adam. And maybe we could get someone to come and talk about it once it's been in and there's a bit of data and impact measurement.
Yeah, I'm sure that the council will be very pleased to do that in a bit.
That'd be great. And I'm just sad no one's changed themselves to anything in your town.
Well, there were the anti groups were sort of threatening to go down and block the implementation, but as far as anybody can tell, nobody's actually bothered to do anything like that. So
All right. All right. Adam number 2. Adam, what's your news?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think the Bristol one kind of knocks what Bath is doing out of the park in terms of size and complexity. And I think it will actually provide a really good, say, Stats 19 analysis down the line for showing for what's recently been done in was it Tower Hamlets, where they looked at the Stats 19 data and started seeing reductions in collisions inside the low traffic neighborhood. So I think the East Barton one, whereas the Bath one, that one's gone live as well, and the one that was gone through to legal challenge, they've got their ETRO paperwork correct this time and gone through with it all, and it's implemented, and it does seem to be working quite successfully as well. So that went live this week, or just at the end of the week. So yeah, so I think, you know, there are these things are happening. I think that a lot of them are happening also because of the city they're funded from the CRSTS program. So a lot of this is about trying to roll all of this stuff out by the end of before March 2027. So there should be more of these rolling out from Bristol and also from Bath, and hopefully I haven't heard anything from South Gloss. So if anybody knows anything about what's happening in South Gloss in terms of low traffic neighborhoods or livable neighborhoods, please raise your hand, and because I have not heard a single thing from that end of things.
Okay, thanks, Adam. If anyone knows, please shout. Right, would Adam 3 or Adam 4 like to ask a question as well? While we're on to the Adams, or anyone else? Have we got any more, news updates, contributions? Does anyone from Cambridge want to talk about what's happening here? I can't bear to talk about it. No. Well then, shall we hand over to Mark? Ranty Highwayman, the floor is yours. Please enlighten us.
Hello. I'm going to keep my camera off because my internet's rubbish tonight. So yeah, let's see what happens. I'm a bit early now, so
Mark, I'm really sorry, but
let's
we
have a
are
look
not getting audio
at the path
coming
to
through.
enlightenment. And I'm going to start off with a picture of.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark.
Are you hearing me now?
Okay, let's try again. Go for it. That's better.
Right. Is that better?
Yes.
Right. Just interrupt if it goes wrong then. So the path to enlightenment, I'm starting off with these lighting columns from Lyme Regis, which will be the only ornate fancy ones I'll permit. I think they're great. Most of the other ones are twee and annoying and everything else. So let's go and have a talk about street lighting this week. It's been around a long time. So let's go through some of the old-fashioned street lighting things. So we've had the Roman Lanternari, which is something I looked up this week, and they were the people responsible for lighting lamps in Rome back in the day. Meanwhile, in Beijing, they had bamboo canes running naturally occurring gas, which they used to light at the ends to create lighting. In the Middle East, we had oil lamp. London had the lamp lighters. And in Paris, we had the dual-purpose lighting columns, which used to shout to the lamppost in revolutionary France. And I think you can guess what happened to those. In terms of modern street lighting, in 1807, we had 13 gas lamps installed in Pall Mall in London. So that was the first real public lighting in contemporary times, following improvements made by William Murdoch. No idea what he improved, but he improved it enough that we can stick him in the street. And by 1820, we had 40,000 in London alone. And a nice little cartoon there of people enjoying the street lighting. But the first electric lighting in the UK was Mosley Street in Newcastle. So it's nice to have someone else first. And here's a plaque commemorating that. Joseph Swan invented the incandescent light bulb, and very shortly after he demonstrated that, the first electric public lighting ended up on Mosley Street. So in terms of modern street lighting and the law, we need to look towards Section 97 of the Highways Act 1980. And essentially, a highway authority may provide lighting. It's a power, not a duty, so they don't have to provide street lighting. They have powers to enter into contracts for people to supply power to the lighting, and that includes gas as well as modern electricity, plus any other means. So yeah, someone's thought about that. Maybe we'll invent some other way of transmitting power somehow. I don't know. and highway authorities can construct, maintain, and do whatever they like in terms of work, the public lighting system. The only time a highway authority has to light something is if it's a road hump. And if you delve into the legislation behind that, you can actually light a single hump, which is interesting because generally speaking, you wouldn't put them in a real situation, but potentially you could if you're directly lighting one of them. If we've got 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, we don't need to light very much. But if it's above that, there's lots we have to light. And if we've got traffic calming, again, the law here doesn't say you have to light things, they just have to be conspicuous, but lighting may be part of that. And on the right-hand side there is a really nice sign from the City of London, which perversely, that sign doesn't need to be lit anyway, and the city is 20, but they've decided to light this thing. It's a very, very thin LED sign, so one for the little sign geeks there. So yes, 20 miles an hour is good because you don't need to light very much, which means if you introduce a new one, you can go around decluttering all the old signs out, get rid of all the lighting and save some money there. Good example of sign lighting on the right-hand side. Exactly the same sign, same location, within a few seconds of each other. It's just the bottom photograph there was taken with a flash, and it just shows how good modern signs are at reflecting light. And generally speaking, the fallback position on most traffic signs is that they have this retroreflective material. So there we go. Let's go back to lighting itself. It's still under the British interpretation of a European standard, which is BSEN 13201. And I'll leave the detail of that to street lighting engineers if you can find one. They're very hard to find these days. But essentially, the standard there talks about different classes of lighting systems by use and need. So motorways are a complete different kettle of fish to a park I've got here on the right-hand side. And it talks about renewal, refurbishment, energy consumption approaches, and all sorts of interesting, geeky street lighting things. But in terms of general principles of how you'd go about designing a street lighting system, generally speaking, we're interested in lighting junctions because things happen at junctions. On the outside of bends because of the way the light gets thrown across the road. Then after that, we'd kind of stagger them one side or the other, or if you've got a dual carriageway, as in the photo, it's on both sides of the road here. And points of conflict. So if there's some traffic calming or priority working or something like that, we might decide to light that separately. And generally speaking, we want uniform lighting levels. We don't want sort of bright and dark spots because things start to hide in the shadows. And if we're going from somewhere which is unlit, somewhere which is lit, really that needs to sort of be staged over a bit of a distance because it takes time for eyes to react to change in lighting, especially important on higher speed roads. This is where I get to use some amusing language. So here is your anatomy of lighting columns on the right-hand side here. Just, yeah, some terminology for you. We have some common heights. So 4 meters tend to be used in paths and parks, 5 and 6 in local streets, 8 and 10 on main streets, 10 and 12 on trunk roads. And there's all sorts of really clever floodlighting and mast systems. As a rule of thumb, lighting columns are spaced every 30 meters on residential streets, sometimes more, sometimes less. And if they're staggered on either side of the road, then that's 30 meters between the opposing columns, if that makes sense. 40 meters tends to be on main road because generally the columns are taller and the lanterns are a lot more powerful. But all of this in terms of the level of luminance you can enjoy at ground level is about the lantern, the column height, the position, and all sorts of other issues around maintenance. So there's the anatomy of lighting columns. It's more complex to manage, but we can add it to buildings. In the City of London, they've got their own legislation that makes it really, really easy to go in and kind of strong arm people. Elsewhere, it's by negotiation, but it's pretty common across the North Sea on the mainland. And, you know, it just reduces clutter. Street lighting, in my opinion, really should be in the background doing its job and not be flash and stuff that people look at. There's more going on the street, which is more important than the actual lighting. If we have narrower footways, then columns need to be put in at the rear to maximise the walkable space. If you put the column in curbside, you tend to be about half a metre from the face of the curb, and that's half a metre lost from the effective width. And if you've got a line of stuff along the footway, you start to sterilise walking space. And also, if it's at the back, it's less for people to crash into, which happens all the time because people bounce up curbs to try and get into parking spaces. You'll all be familiar with cherry pickers out in the street, people up at the back of those, maintaining things. We can use holding columns. This one happens to be at a railway station, but in the hard to reach places, avoiding having to work at height, fold down columns are really useful. It's a bit hard to see, but you can, but it's on the base of that lamp column, they've attached a spring-loaded mechanism to help with the lowering and raising. So the guys that are working at ground level, they don't have to climb anything. And on the railway, you don't really want to start bringing in platforms because you're going to have to close the railway down. Lanterns themselves, the things on top that throw the light out, huge varieties. They're mostly LED these days. There are a couple of different specifications, I guess. You have semi-cut off, and that allows some of the light to spill upwards. So the theory there is, say it's a bigger road, it throws some light up into the trees or buildings, gives a bit more of a view on what's going on, and also it spills across the footways, other places. Or you can have a full cut off, so you get no upward diffusion whatsoever. So that's good for environmentally sensitive areas, dark skies, that kind of thing. And there's all sorts of colour temperatures that we can play around with for sensitive areas. So one of the criticisms of LED is it can be very sterile, very white lights, so you can get softer, warmer lights. The photo is, remember that trees grow, but equally that's quite a nice lantern then in terms of colour temperature. And then within all of this stuff, we've got power saving devices which can dim, they can control areas, they can detect people, vehicles, turn them on and off as they go past. You can switch them off at different times of the night to save power. All sorts of clever smart monitoring control, which is really good in terms of generating data for asset management, to the point where a really clever system can predict when something might fail by voltage changing, all sorts of things. So you can actually get out there and preempt a failure and replace things before they go wrong. You can get off grid. So there's a nice little example here from Clacton-on-Sea. Generally speaking, though, if you have power running past your lighting columns, you're better off plugging into that. Really, this kind of solar and wind and other energy systems where you can't take a cable through, or where it's really expensive to do that. Here, it's the wrong side of sea defences, which you probably don't start drilling through. Then you have what we call task lighting. So here's an example of the main road here. It's a pretty busy road being lit by this very tall column, but hanging off the side there is a small little bracket with a lantern, and that's particularly to light the footway there. So for urban areas, we see that a lot more now. Some authorities are tending now to concentrate on lighting walking, wheeling and cycling space in preference to the driving space. I guess there's a bit of a debate to be had there, but task lighting is really, really helpful. Getting towards the end now, so let's have a quick look at crossings and especially zebra crossings. Nice little example here of the stripy posts you can see with the Belisha beacons are actually 5 metre lighting columns. At the very, very top, there's a special lantern that illuminates the crossing in a different way to traditional street lighting. So most lighting lights the ground, the plan area. These lighting systems illuminate the vertical. And what we can see here, my 2 willing volunteers get themselves very, very brightly lit on a stagger back from the pub. But you can see it from a long distance away. It's really good in terms of colour definition. You can see there's people there. That's probably the basic setup we should have. You still see some little tiny spotlights just under the Belisha beacon, which don't really light anything up for anybody. And finally, I need to mention electric vehicle charging because we like to add it to the lighting columns. It's fine, it's there, it does a good job, I guess, from that point of view. It is low charging, so it's really for top up and overnight. You don't need to have any more kit. You can retrofit that inside the lighting column itself. However, you have to have the curbside lighting columns, which sterilizes your walking space. I mentioned the spacing earlier, so every 30 meters, including the stagger. With that, you're never going to have enough lighting columns to meet future demand, the way things are going. And as you can see in the photo here from Westminster, somebody couldn't get close to the column, so they trailed their cable across the footway. And because people cross between cars and you miss it, that's somebody tripping over in the future. So there's these things that need to be taken into account. So hopefully there, a whistle-stop tour of street lighting. If you need more detail, try and find yourself a street lighting engineer. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate it. And your audio held up mostly through the presentation. We've got some questions as well. This is where I should put my hand up and say I come from a line of lighting engineers and street and commercial lighting designers. But anyway, let's see what we can learn today. Tim, you've got your hand up. First question.
I have. Thank you, Mark. The bit you missed out is, I think, I know, risky move, Sarah, I agree. I read an article a few years ago about the choice that lighting engineers have between a column that will withstand the impact of a Mini while slicing the Mini in half, or a column that is prepared to collapse as it's approached by the Mini, and that challenge of speed and impact and what's doing the bigger damage. I wondered if you've got anything about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So those of us who were here when I did my introduction to Vision Zero, with the origins in Sweden, talked about where somebody crashed into I'm pretty sure it was the foundation of a lighting column, which started the whole Vision Zero thing in Sweden. Now, if you go for a residential street, your 5 or 6 meter high column without the lantern on top, the actual column itself weighs about 35, 40 kilos, which isn't very much at all when you think about it. They're quite flimsy. So from that point of view, generally speaking, you're probably not going to be coming off too badly if you did crash into it. Once you get to higher speed roads, which are 40 miles an hour and above, then you really have to start looking at the risk that columns do present to people leaving the road. On the higher speed roads, you start to put things behind crash barriers, or you can have columns that crumple a lot more than just basic steel one would. So there's composite plastic things out there which really do collapse when you hit them. I'm by no means an expert on the high speed road side of things, but certainly national highways and the other devolved governments, they tend to go for the crash barriers where columns are closer to the carriageway. But from a risk point of view, you can have them set further back, so there's less chance of somebody going into them. Or you could put them on the central reserve where it'd be protected and have a double bracket. The problem with that is you then have to close the higher speed lane to get at them for maintenance. So yeah, lots of things to balance with that. Really good question.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, taking a question from the chat. From David, is there any obligation to make sure or evaluate that street lighting adequately lights the footway on local streets?
No.
No?
It's a short answer. Highway authorities have no requirement to light anything at all, apart from humps, maybe making traffic calming conspicuous, whatever the third thing was that I mentioned earlier. What I would say is, though, if they're choosing the class of lighting to light a road in an urban area, they really should be considering how they light the footways in other areas. But there's no legal requirement to do that.
Right. So the purpose of lighting is driver safety around hazards on the road and not really about any other user.
That's the origins of it. I mean, things have changed a lot and it's evolved, but yeah, like a lot of stuff in highways, it's all about the driver. That's where it all comes from.
Yep, there we go. Okay, next question is from Graham. Graham feels subjectively that the LED street lights we now have make it more difficult to interpret the scene than the old sodium lamps. Not sure why. Might just be because he was used to the sodium lamps, or maybe his age. But is there any research on this? And there's a bit of discussion in the chat about that as well. But what's your view, Mark?
Yeah, I think there's probably something in what people were used to. So the sodium, for those that don't know, low pressure sodium were kind of a fairly deep orange colour, but very potentially dark and dingy. Then you had high pressure sodium, which was more of a pinkish light. There's also mercury, which sounds quite terrifying these days, which was a fairly bright but bluish light. So this is for LED. The problem is that all of that stuff, it's like 150, 250 watt units, which draw a lot of current, a lot of electricity. With LEDs, the really early stuff was a pretty stark white light. These days, they can do all sorts of amazing things with the color temperature. So actually, you could go back and simulate pretty much what you had or what you remember. Certainly in amenity areas, people tend to go for something which is a bit warmer, a bit less cold.
Yeah, thank you. Mark, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, the white light thing is quite interesting. Having had my cataract last week, and one eye now has a white balance and the other one is yellow. So it does affect people's vision. So there is an issue there. My local community association get very hung up about conservation area swan neck lights. They don't care what the light is like, the quality of the light or the brightness. They just care about what the conservation area lights. There's some discussion about that there. I keep going back saying, actually, it's more important that they light things up. Have you had any experience of dealing with things like that?
Yeah, so there is a conservation area in my neck of the woods where they had the oldie worldy carriage lamp type things. Interestingly, the estate when it was first built didn't actually have street lighting whatsoever. So this was put in, I don't know, 10, 15 years after the thing was built. And the local conservation group was very protective of these columns, to the point where the actual top to them had where all the gubbins was pretty near the top when it was converted for electricity. It was absolutely full of asbestos, so they couldn't be reused or refurbished. So in the end, the poor street lighting engineer had to go and find a supplier that would mock up these things. I don't know why they get so attached to them. Perhaps I'm a Philistine, Mark, but yeah, there are genuine historic. Some of the gas lights around the country, they are historic. So maybe there's a good reason to keep those. But in lots of environmentally sensitive areas, quite often you'll find that public lighting didn't exist when they were built. It's a thing, isn't it? You put lighting in, the kit of which blends into the background. So you paint it black, it's very low key, or do you have it, I don't know, painted a garish purple, got some ornate thing on the top, and it's there in the street. My view is it should sit in the background doing its job, not be there. Other people have different views and they get very emotional about it.
All right. Well, here's another one we could potentially get emotional about. Shane asks, might it not be better for drivers to have lampposts at the edge of the curb to crash into rather than the squashy humans on the footpath? Also, are you increasing the perceived design speeds of roads by putting lampposts behind the footpath? So where should we put our posts relative to the
the reason that lighting columns and other pieces of street furniture tend to be put about half a metre back, it goes back to where you've got larger vehicles, buses, lorries, and how far the wing mirrors extend. So if they were very close to the curb, you'd be forever having bus drivers whacking wing mirrors. But also people cycling, generally speaking, you want things about half a metre away from where people can cycle. So if you're building a cycle path, it's good practice to have the columns at least half a metre outside of the cycle path for that reason. Yeah, people crash into all sorts of things. They do crash into humans, but if you've got columns in at 30 metre spacings and they're staggered, you're probably looking at every 60 metres. The problem is it's low speed collisions, people manoeuvring, backing into them and bending them. As I say, the residential ones, 40 kilos in weight, they're not going to take much to get them bent and knocked over. I would say probably keeping the footway space free is more important than a theoretical trade-off between a column protecting somebody walking along. They're not there for protection. They will bend.
And so it could make things worse as well, maybe. Okay, a question from Bev about movement sensor lights. What are your thoughts on them? Are there situations, you know, in highway design where a sensor light might be appropriate?
Yeah, the places that they've tended to be used is where you've got a decent cycle track or a path or whatever running through open land, where you've got sensitivities, maybe there's bats, other wildlife. So literally, you're being sensed as you approach them, and your path has been lit as you go. So as long as it's anticipating you early enough, and you can see far enough ahead, because that's the point of having lighting. Yeah, there's definitely use for them, and potentially even in other areas. Maybe you don't need them lit when there's no traffic around. So just have them movement sensors from a power saving point of view is a good idea as well, potentially.
Yep. Okay. Adrian, you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thanks. Hi, Mark. I was interested in your comments on the savings from 20 miles an hour, and how much electricity can be saved. I put in the chat that Cornwall have calculated that for a £650,000 investment, which is actually the renewal cost of the posts, they can save £200,000 a year. I was just wondering whether you know other local authorities who have done similar calculations, or whether that sounds, I mean, that sounds like an enormous, if you roll that out across the country, that sounds like an enormous sum of money.
Yeah, I've not read anything recently, I must admit, but I mean, when you think about revenue costs, so power does tend to get cheaper over time. So if you can actually remove something today, it's going to save you then forevermore, and it's going to insulate you against those costs. A lot of the kits out there in terms of lit traffic signs, because they're aged as well, they're going to have to be replaced. Hopefully new signs going in, people know the rules a bit more, but there's a lot of old stuff, especially where people try and get a 20 limit in or 20 zone in, and they've never had the budget to actually go through as they should do and strip all the old kit out. So that tends to be ignored and left. So I think there's probably huge sums in there. It's only going to be a one-off cost to make those changes. But actually, if you're going through and putting a 20 zone in, try and build that into your capital cost of the scheme, because then you'll save your revenue costs. So yeah, I think there's lots of money to be saved there over time for sure. And if you don't need to light stuff, that's more kit that you don't have on the street.
Yeah, it's a climate change win as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it ticks lots of boxes for sure.
Thanks.
I'd say it's not just lighting signs as well. Actually, a lot of those signs aren't even needed at all. So you're saving on maintenance of those signs forevermore as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, I think we've got our last question, unless any more are coming through. And this one is from Lucy. And I imagine it's is there no requirement to light pedestrian crossing facilities?
Oh, now that is a good question. The short answer is no. However, if you're a designer, let's say you're putting in a refuge, it's slightly difficult because you could put a refuge in a rural area where there is no power at all or public lighting. So maybe you don't need to light it there. But if it's an urban area, let's say it's a zebra crossing or a pelican crossing, whatever, you don't potentially need to light that because you have a general system of lighting. But from a design point of view, I would always look at the crossing itself and perhaps improve the lighting either side of the crossing. If it's a zebra, I would definitely go for the lanterns I showed in my presentation. They don't cost you a lot more to do, and it's really, really effective at lighting the crossing itself.
Okay, brilliant. I think that's it for questions.
Good. Really good questions this week. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. I think we're all going to go and look at our streets very differently after today's session. Are they healthy and are they well lit? And what can we do about it? So, okay. Oh, I see one hand up. So, Adam, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it was more because looking at the zebras and zebra crossings and lighting on those, has there been any study showing the effect in terms of driver behavior to actually respecting them? Is there a significant benefit in doing that?
No, I don't know anything that's been done around behaviour. It's about actually people being seen. That's the main thrust of doing them. There's still kits out there where you've got some really low powered spotlights that just don't do a thing. So this is really about maybe because of driver behaviour, we need to sort of up our arms race a little bit to make sure people have no excuse that they haven't seen the crossing. There are variants which light up the white stripes of the posts. I mean, they're really bright. They pick out the crossings well in terms of position. There is a risk with those that that all the drivers see and not the people trying to cross those. So I'm less of a fan of those for that reason. Probably about risk, Adam.
Just what I can. Thank you for this talk, and this is for our YouTube. When people are watching it later, Tim Morton just said, "Thanks, Mark, for an illuminating talk." And I
very good, very good.
Yes.
Adam, can I just add something? There's a zebra crossing in Portsmouth where the white stripes light up. The actual white stripes on the zebra crossing light up as people, and they have side bars. I'll try and post a video of it because when I was there, I was amazed at it. The side bars where the stop lines also light up and sort of have a moving light, so it really highlights it. But I think people in Portsmouth and the council said they don't want to do it again because it's incredibly expensive and also very high, liable to get damaged if obviously something hits the light on the crossing. Have you seen that, Mark?
I've read about it and I was skeptical as usual with these sort of gimmicks.
Okay.
I'll put a link on the LinkedIn now that I know it's there.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. So we've had all the Adams, all the Marks, all the questions. So I will just give us a little highlight for next week. Next week, we're joined by Izzy Ramilli from Possible, who will be sharing the findings of the Hot Wheels research project, examining the experiences of on-demand food delivery workers and highlighting the importance of cycle lanes in workplace safety. And I know we've had quite a bit of discussion about this in the chat over the last few weeks. So do come and join us next week. But again, a huge thank you to Lucy and to Mark for being our wonderful guest speakers today, and to all of you for being patient with me with our slightly unusual itinerary this evening. But we'll see you all soon. Thank you.